Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting interview. Today I'm at the Russian Embassy. I'm joined none other by Alex Arefiev. Thank you very much for the interview.
It was nice hosting you. Thank you very much.
Like, before we get into the deep things, I always want to find out who is Alex. Walk us through when did you come to South Africa and how you finding the country?
Well, my full name is Alexander Arefiev. I'm press attaché of the Russian Embassy, and I arrived to South Africa in 2017. That was quite a time. So I actually spent more time in Pretoria than I did in Moscow. So I can say that Pretoria is more of a home to me like now.
So we can give you citizenship now.
Well, that's very kind of you. I'll stick with Russian citizenship, but I appreciate the idea.
Now let me know, obviously when you go visit the country, you do your own research about the country, the language they speak, the people, the culture. When you were researching South Africa before you came, what was your first impression about the country?
Well, I always perceive from understanding that if you want to truly understand what the country is and what the people who reside in the country are, you need to travel there yourself, see it firsthand with your own eyes, and walk around. Talk to people, see what they're doing, what they're enjoying, what they like, what they dislike. Hotels, when you stay, they don't give you exactly the impression of the country. You just sort of stay in a cocoon. But if I'm lucky and I'm humbled to be invited to stay in such a long stay, and I had my first impression was it's truly a rainbow nation because I admired the versatility of nature. The wild nature here. I travel practically everywhere by now, and every time it's like it's like a soaking fresh air because it's so refreshing. The landscapes are different from what we see in Russia, but it enriches me as a person. I like to perceive it this way. And speaking of culture here, this is where I guess Russia and South Africa align. Where we can understand each other because we both are multicultural, multi-ethnic countries. So it's more like two melting pots, and we enrich each other by interacting. So it was fascinating to me to have so many, to find out that we have so many official languages. It's quite an achievement. It's true linguistic diversity. In Russia, it really echoes in the hearts of a lot of Russians because we do have lots of languages in our homeland as well. So we understand what brought you to this idea, and we truly give you a friendly handshake on this one.
You spoke about language. Have you ever tried learning any South African language?
I tried, but since I'm being an interpreter myself, I also perceive from understanding that language must be given respect. You don't learn language by just cherry picking some phrases and catchwords and phrases and whatnot. You need to delve deep into this. I would enjoy it if I had a lot of free time to explore some of the South African languages, but I did try Xhosa in my...
And that's a very difficult one, eh?
When I was a student, I tried Xhosa. I sincerely tried it, and then I realized that it's a fascinating language, but you need time to delve into it. I was intrigued, but in order to make things right, in order to make things good, it takes time. Same with languages. So, but I always enjoy listening to someone speaking a language I don't understand, because one thing, it sounds like music. I'm trying to catch the melody of the speech. It always fascinates me. Since I've been dealing with foreign languages since days of my childhood, actually. I'm enjoying languages as they are. I think it's a God's gift to have so many languages, so many ways of expressing your thoughts. That's truly amazing.
Look, you touched on the relationship of South Africa and Russia and how we both align, how we multi-ethnic and the languages. Now I want to go back to the history of Russia and South Africa, and specifically on the South African days of the liberation during apartheid, and we know that Russia was a very friendly ally to South Africa. Now walk us through that, the history of Russia and South Africa.
Well, first of all, we in Russia, we take pride in the fact that we assisted South African people, we assisted other African nations on their way, on their path of liberation struggle. We truly take pride in that, because Russia perceived from understanding, and our foreign policy was based on the principle, and it still is, based on the principle that no one is free until everyone is free. So colonialism, slavery, and other inventions of the so-called civilized West, they belong on the scrapyard of history. They must be long gone, and the Soviet Union understand that. So this is why we were at the forefront of adopting the Declaration of Granting Independence to Colonial Peoples and Countries of 1960. We also take pride in that fact. It was a real document, it was a real milestone of decolonization. So, and we do, we attach great value and respect to the fact that the South Africans are now cherish the memory of those who sacrificed their lives to assisting South African people in the liberation struggle. I'm referring to Freedom Park and the Wall of Names, where the 67 names of my compatriots enshrined there. So this shows that South Africa cares. South Africa is connected to its past, because without past we cannot build the future. Those who do not know past are doomed to repeat it all over again. So the same mistakes all over again. So this is why we in Russia do attach great value to the preserving historical memory, and we we spare no effort to protect our legacy, to protect our history, to protect the truth of our contribution, including to the decolonization in Africa. So we've been assisting for years. And well, it might sound a little bit odd, but to my understanding, we Russians just understand this is our common ground. I mean, we understand the pain of the peoples who are subdued to colonization, slavery, and other inhuman treatment and discrimination. We know what it feels like. We are, well, Russians not exactly purely Europeans, where again a mix of cultures and ethnicities, but we've also experienced those inhuman treatment. I'm referring to World War II experience, when the Nazis, the so-called civilizators from the West, invaded our country and enslaved our people. So we know what it feels like to be treated like second-rate human. So this is why our assistance in decolonization and liberation struggle was dictated by our pure will and understanding that this is wrong and it must be discarded, it must be forgotten, and not forgotten, it must be put behind us, it must be completely eliminated in all forms.
And then just with regards to that issue, there's a difference between the approach of the West and the approach of Russia when it comes to Africa and when it comes to the focus on Africa. And I remember the foreign minister of France, of Russia, was in the country, and then you are saying that let African countries fix their own issues. We don't want to impose our own ideas as Russia. Let the African people do their own things. And I'm asking this because, especially amongst young South Africans, there's this is this agitation to say that the West comes to Africa, steal our resources. They want to meddle in our issues. They want to kill our presidents. They want to involve in our resources. But Russia's like, we want to help out. We're friendly, and we generally see each other as brother and sister. Now, what do you think has been the success of Russia's approach to Africa compared to the West?
Well, it brings us back to history again. Since West, for quite some time, it has been pursuing the idea that everything it does is right by definition. So regardless of the peculiarities, or whatever peculiarities of this or that nation or region might have, they perceive from understanding that their values are universal and thus must be accepted without hesitation, without double thinking, without any second thought. So we come here, we impose it on you, you need to accept it. Simple as that. So they don't want to delve into, cultural peculiarities, historical peculiarities. They don't care. They just come and impose their will. When it comes to Russia, we We do take pride that we do perceive from understanding, we do think that Russia has its own unique historical way. We protect this historical way. We think it's very important to us, and thus we will follow this path. And we respect the right of every other nation to follow this path as well. Same goes to Africa, because we never perceived African continent as a sort of a resource base. Nothing of the kind. As I said, we stood with you when Africans fought for their liberation and their statehood, and we fully respect that the African nations are sovereign, they're independent, and we treat it like an independent, a real actor. So this is what forms the basis of the African solutions to African problems principle of our foreign policy. This is why we don't intervene in domestic affairs. This is not in our diplomatic tradition, never has been. We do respect the right of historical choice, because I'm speaking about South Africa in particular. Every African nation refers to the same thing stands. Let the people decide what they truly want, how they see the future of their countries, because it is up to them alone to shape their own destiny. So this is why this is where the Western hypocrisy and superiority complex come from. They actually believe that they are obliged, they even obliged to decide everything for everyone, because, well, they think that they've achieved like the pinnacle of social evolution, so to say. But no, it's nothing of the kind. And the West, well, I'm speaking ahead, but the West, the special military operation and everything that followed after it showed that the West left just an empty shells of those human rights, respect of private property. It's all been violated. When West just drowned into anti-Russian frenzy, they simply discarded everything they stood for. So no democracy, no pluralism of opinions, no diversity in opinions, no nothing. No respect for, let alone rule of law. So that's it. That's the difference between the approach. Russia has never perceived itself as a ruler of the universe, a ruler of the world. We don't need this. We'd rather build a multipolar, truly balanced world, because we do understand that the world is versatile. The world is multifaceted. You can't just put everyone in the single line and expect everyone to be the same. So the true diversity comes from diversity of opinions, diversity of points of view, and this, so we can enrich each other. So and it's impossible that just one center of decision making, well, I'm referring to Washington, it's just humanly impossible to make one center to decide for everyone, because you don't see what people think. You don't see what people see on the spot. You're too far away.
Before we touch on the special military operation, I just want to find out: do you think that there's so much pressure on Russia now? You know, because many African countries are like, we don't want to work with the West. Russia, please help us. We need your help. Russia, because I've seen many African presidents, they've come out to say, we actually need Russian investment. Can you guys please help us? Do you think, as a Russian president, do you think there's some form of like a pressure for you to help African countries? Because African countries are beginning to say, like, guys, we actually need your help. So do you think there's some form of pressure from Russia?
No, I wouldn't call it pressure. Because Russia has always been ready, it still is, and always will be, ready to cooperate with every country that is ready to cooperate on the principles of mutual benefit and mutual respect. If African nations they display their intent to build stronger relations with Russia, they explore new ways of cooperating, we're open for this. And there are already instruments and mechanism established for that purposes. I'm referring to the AECAS, African Economic Cooperation Association, and the Russia-Africa Summit. It serves the very same purpose. So yes, we also reach out for African nations, because we want to build a more prosperous and more just and equal world. And well, if African nations would like to join us in this, again, on the basis of mutual respect and benefit, we only welcome that. There is no pressure in this. It's moreover, it's a logical way of, let's say, humankind's civilization's evolution, so to say. Our entire world is built on cooperation, not confrontation. So there is no pressure in cooperating. We welcome it, and we hope and we expect it to grow and prosper.
Now, Alex, I wanna talk about the big issue around the world that's been making headlines globally. You know, the special military operation. But before we talk about the interim results and everything, what led to the special military operation?
Yeah, well, true. It's been a year since special military operation started, and all this year, all these days, the special military operation has been making to the headlines. Well, when it all started, Western media tried to deliberately simplify things, depriving their audience, global audiences for that matter, of the important context of the situation. So they tried to present things as if Russia just, for no reason, attacked sovereign Ukraine. It was like a senseless aggression, and so on and so forth. But historically speaking, within the context, there was a reason to that. So, first of all, when the Soviet Union agreed that the East Germany, West Germany, were to reunify, we were given a promise by NATO and by the West that NATO would not expand further to the east, even to the territory of former Eastern Germany, let alone, let's say, Eastern European states. But after Soviet Union collapsed, the West perceived that, they wanted to sort of seize the opportunity to rule the world single-handedly, and started to expand NATO. And for 30 years, we've been telling them that this is not going to stand. This is a crossing of red lines. You're moving our military infrastructure closer to our borders. We've been given, in response, there were two options basically: either no response whatsoever, or it's not against you, it's against Iran or someone else. Well, it cannot stand as a even at least passable explanation. So we perceived it as a threat because NATO was created it's a purely military alliance created against the Eastern Bloc. Even Warsaw Pact was created. There was no Warsaw Pact before NATO, so NATO even triggered the creation of the Warsaw Pact. NATO was established in 1949, and Warsaw Pact in 1953. And it was also established when West Germany was adopted as a NATO member state. We had to respond. The Eastern Bloc had to respond somehow. So this is why we created our own architecture of security, so to say. It was a bipolar world, yes. So we had our own architecture. They had their own architecture. They broke their promise, and they tried to make their best. They tried their best to make things look as if there were no promise at all, but there was. There was a promise, and there are written documents that prove it. There is no written full-fledged agreement to this. Correct, but there are written traces of the promise made by the West. Another promise made by the West and violated by the West. So double standard has always been among the tools of foreign policy of the collective
You're
West.
talking of double standards, and you just mentioned media, and then how media played a crucial role in making Russia seem like the bully, the enemy. Just walk me through that, and especially as a Russian person who knows the history, who knows the truth. When you see this media, when you see these articles, when you see these TV programs, how does that make you feel? Because there's certain things that are deliberately being hidden, especially the agreement that they had. Now, I just want us to focus on that media specifically and their anti-Russia stance.
Yeah, so their first method of attack was to make things look like Russia was unprovoked aggression from Russia's part. But I was getting closer to Ukraine issue. We specified it on numerous occasions that Ukraine joining NATO is completely unacceptable for Russia because this poses a direct threat to our national security. This cannot stand. Full stop. There can be no discussion about it. It's just unacceptable for us. And well, Ukraine, and it was actually well spread thanks to the global Western media, that well, Ukraine is a sovereign state. They can decide their future. They can do whatever they want. No. Sovereignty does not equal impunity. You cannot do whatever you want. It can all be scaled down to person relations. Let's say I have my rights and freedoms, you have your rights and freedoms. My rights and freedoms stop where your rights and freedoms begin. At no point can I say like, well, you know, I have a freedom to do whatever I want, and I can rob you of your freedom or violate your rights somehow. It's we have a common space to live, so we have to look for a compromise. So to say, we have to look for a mutually acceptable solution. So this Ukraine can do whatever it wants because it's a sovereign state. It doesn't get us anywhere. Speaking of which, being sovereign state does not mean that you have rights. You also have obligations, and you are to follow these obligations. I'm referring to, in this regard, to the 1999 Istanbul documents of OSCE, which clearly states that a country cannot. It deals with European matters, but the principle is as follows. A country cannot bolster its defenses at the expense of hindering the defenses of other countries. Full stop. And Ukraine, being as a sovereign state, is to oblige to this rule. We have the rule of law, right? We have the international law. No one canceled it, although West tries to do so. But last time we checked, nobody canceled the international law. So we expected Ukraine to honor its own agreements, its own obligations. That's it. So, and speaking of NATO membership and non-membership, one of the arguments that the Western media tried to push is that Ukraine does not even qualify technically as a NATO member state. But another question arises from Russian side. Okay, what does it change for us? It doesn't qualify today, then what prevents it from qualifying tomorrow, or day after tomorrow, or a week later? Well, metaphorically speaking, of course. So Russia cannot just wake up every morning and check if Ukraine qualifies or not. It's still a threat. So why even talking about this? This cannot stand. Full stop. We were speaking, well, it qualifies, it does not qualify. Well, you know, the criteria can be changed, like in a blink of an eye, and bam, it qualifies. It's a threat. So, and I'd like to delve on this even deeper. So, we're not. The matter is not about being formally accepted, formally join NATO, because NATO was exploring for military purposes, exploring the territory of Ukraine without the latter's formal membership in the organization. We said this is a threat. What does it change to, well, from Russia's standpoint, if it's not officially a NATO member state? You're still exploring, you still deploy troops, you still deploy equipment there, you still pose a military threat to our country. If it's not officially NATO, it doesn't make it less of a threat. So, and these started long ago, 2021 or 2022 for that matter. All these years of Ukraine's independence, well, I'm using the quote marks because the West has been heavily influencing Ukraine's domestic and foreign policy. Well, they've been actually trying to turn this country into its own colony for the purposes of attacking Russia. There can be no other explanation to this. The atrocities committed by Kiev regime against Donbas, against the Russian population of Donbas and Ukrainian population of Donbas, further proves that point. So. All these years, NATO has been conducting joint drills, joint training programs. They've been establishing like there's some sort of a points of their presence. They've been manifesting their presence in Ukraine, and we've been warning our Western partners that we see this and this cannot stand. So, is it against Iran? Even if it's even pointless to speak about this against Iran thing. It's still you're using the territory of a sovereign state to make an adversary hostile moves against another sovereign state. It doesn't change anything. So it's still aggressive. It's still expansionist way of dealing of pursuing your foreign policy, dear West. And yeah, I'm wrapping this up. Sorry, you can see it's a big issue,
And I can see the emotion when you speak.
and you can see the volumes. This, well, I hope that my speech alone says that there is a lot to it. It wasn't like just Russia woke up in the morning and said, well, let's invade Ukraine. No. Well, as I speak, there's a lot to it. There's a huge trace behind it. And even after 8 years of crimes, terrible, horrible crimes committed by the Kiev regime, we still pursued a diplomatic solution. It was we're still eligible to talk if the talks are actually substantial, and if they proceed from the reality that's already there on the world map. And in 2021, late 2021, we've issued our proposal, a draft agreement on mutual security. So basically, we proposed to West, let's resolve this peacefully. So this is our proposal. Let's talk. But no, what we got in response was arrogance, complete disrespect, and disregard to our position. And people were dying in Donbass. We're not even sticking to the ethnicity in this regard. The crimes were committed. People were suffering. Like in Donbass, the children, just imagine, the children that were born starting from 2014, they've seen nothing but war and destruction in their entire life. They spent their entire lives in shelters. Where were the Western, or the so-called civilized Western community? Where there's all these human rights NGOs? Where have they all been for already 9 years? Nowhere to be seen. And then, after Russia had to protect Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic, to protect people, because no one else was listening, in our common European space, no one was listening except for Russia. We had to do something because we exhausted every single opportunity. There was a Minsk agreement, but we can speak about that later.
Now, after the special military operation, we started seeing the retaliation from the West against Russia. We started seeing sanctions against Russian business people. We started seeing athletes being blocked from sporting events simply because they're Russian. Now, I just want to find out from you, because we know, America invaded Afghanistan. Their athletes were never cancelled. But how does it make you feel that now Russian athletes are being disqualified from sporting events? Russian businessmen are being sanctioned.
Well, personally, myself, as many Russians are, we are understandably, to put it mildly, displeased. But the thing here is the West revealed its true face in this regard. Let's talk about this, because sanctions are illegal in the first place. They're just illegal. The West is trying to bend the international law system to its will by imposing unilateral, again I stress it, illegal sanctions. As you pointed out correctly, there were no sanctions against the US when they invaded Iraq or when NATO destroyed Libya. It's an African continent. When they destroyed Yugoslavia in Europe. One of their points that the Western global media are making, like the hugest, it's the biggest military conflict in Europe since World War II. You're conveniently forgetting the destruction of Yugoslavia. It's in Balkans, it's in Middle Europe. They conveniently forget that NATO defensive alliance destroyed a sovereign state, and not the only sovereign state in this regard. So as for sanctions, let alone that they're illegal, they all turned into some sort of anti-Russian frenzy. So I already mentioned it when we spoke earlier, that they discarded the respect for rule of law. Russian properties overseas were confiscated just because it belonged to Russian, or it seemed that it belonged to Russians. The names of brands that resembled Russian, they also been blocked. It's just a blind frenzy against everything that's Russian or seems Russian. This is pure discrimination. This is pure discrimination. It's illegal. It goes against every conceivable norm of international law. It's just discrimination. And I'll give you some vibrant examples. So the West tried at a certain point. I'm not sure if it still does, to present it as if we're not against Russian people, we're against Russian government. But that's not completely true. That's completely not true.
Now, Alex, the West is busy sanctioning Russia, but it seems like their sanctions are not working, So I just want to find out, what do you think is the success from Russia to survive all the sanctions and all this bullying from the West for so long?
The sanctions, to begin with, it's a double-edged sword. Since the global economy is exactly global and intertwined now, there is no sort of a safe haven now. So by attacking someone, West decided to attack Russia economically, and not only economically, they attack themselves because of the connections being severed. The supply chains has been destroyed or modified beyond any repair. So this is a double-edged sword. So you can't hurt someone without hurting, without getting a boomerang effect, so to say. And Russia economy proved to be resilient, but we're not alone. The West likes to present things as if they are the world. They're not the world. They're part of it, true. The so-called collective West. They're part of the world. Yes, there's a significant part of the world, true, but it's not the entire world. So we have friends around the globe. We have countries who share our approaches, who see what the West is doing, and they have their own position on that. And sanctions won't get you far, because let alone they're illegal. You have to put extra pressure all the time on not just on Russia but on other countries, on international institutes. You need to constantly pushing people to uphold this sanctions regime. And a lot of problems across the globe were caused by sanctions. Like another argument by the Western media is the Russian-Ukraine conflict spread the food crisis. Like in Africa, in Asia, let's call it collectively the poorest country. The countries are in need of extra, or not extra, just food supplies. But they're again conveniently forgetting that it's not the conflict as it is, that provoked it. No, it was sanctions that were introduced by the West unilaterally. Nobody asked you for this, West. You decided on your own to ruin the international trade relations as they were prior to the special military operation. You did it on your own, and now you're putting all the blame on Russia. Again, it's typical tactic of the West. The West is never to blame for anything. It's always someone. It's always Russia. It's always China, Iran, whatever. Just put a country which is now trendy of being blamed for everything. They literally blame Russia for everything. But it was West who introduced sanctions. It was West who led the situation, who spiked the tension so high that Russia was left with no choice but to start a special military operation. It was West who violated the promise not to expand NATO. It was all West doing. Nobody forced them to do this, and yet they did. So now they're trying to present the things that was like conflict again, was Russia is to blame, because the main harm which this sentence, logical construction holds, is that don't think about anything. It's logically impossible to explain how Russia and Ukraine in Eastern Europe provoked the crisis elsewhere in the world. No, it's impossible, but that's what they're counting on. Just don't think about it. Don't stress. Just blame Russia and carry on. It deprives the audience of the habit of critical thinking, of actually asking more questions to it. Just use this predetermined so to say, like cliches, like Russia is evil, carry on. Doesn't matter, but it does. Well, the devil is in details, as usual. It's Austrian, I guess it's Austrian newspaper. It's written in German, Express. It's called Express. It reported that the grain from Ukraine, which were to be delivered to the poorest country under the Black Sea grain deal, were instead supplied to Spain in order to feed pigs. That's all you need to know about the Western way of thinking, Western way of dealing with humanitarian crisis. They would rather give extra nutrition to pigs than help people in need. So basically that's it. And wrapping up the sanctions theme, well, it won't be right to say that Russia does not feel any effect of the sanctions. Yeah, we do feel the pinch, but as I said, we are resilient and we're not alone. And the West, while imposing sanctions, not in terms of economy, not exclusively economic sanctions, but as you mentioned, against the athletes, against everything Russian, like culture, artists and whatnot. Well, basically what West is doing, it's building the Iron Curtain around itself. Because politicizing sports, it's a topic in its own right. Politicizing sports, it's like an opening of Pandora box. The people who think that it's all about Russia, like Russia is something special and the West treat Russia in a special way, no, there's nothing special for that matter. The West will treat any other country that will try to stand up to it, that will try to protect its sovereignty against the Western influence, they will be given the same treatment as Russia. So if West preserves its global dominance, we can see how it uses its its domination in global finance and internationally to impose its will, to bend others to their will. So other countries can share the same fate with Russia. It's not exclusively that Russia is doing anything special in this regard, and they already opened this Pandora box. So if Russian athletes can be disqualified just because they're Russians, Belarusians, they're also disqualified just because they're Belarusians. The other countries can share the same fate. If it can be done to one country, it can be done to any country, because the seal is broken. So this is the dire consequence of this irresponsible policy, and it was all provoked by this illegal sanctions regime from the West.
You spoke about the global dominance of the West. And do you think that there's a new world order that's coming, that more countries are now going to change from the global dominance of the West to a more BRICS-aligned kind of situation? Do you think we're heading towards something like that?
Well, yeah, I do think we do head to something like that. And as our president said, the multipolar world is the logical wave, like our civilizational evolution. So we'll inevitably get to multipolar world, because a unipolar world with Washington at its helm discredited itself, as we just discussed it, with all those sanctions, with all those destroying of or hindering the international law system. They've been given sort of a carte blanche after the collapse of the Soviet Union, after the collapse of the bipolar world. Unipolar world was given a fair chance, to build something new. But what we received was a little dictate from the Western countries, and the world cannot be okay with this. So we need to move to something else, which is where the multipolarity truly emerges. Because when multipolarity brings more balance to international relations, because the new centers of financial growth, political growth, whatever growth, they can set up to themselves, they can voice their interests and concerns, and other centers, because they're equal, they can come up with equal decision that's beneficial to everyone else. This is what the international law, this is the main difference between the international law and the so-called rules-based order, which has been touted by the West. As our officials, including our foreign minister, repeatedly said, nobody has seen those rules. We don't know what these rules are, how they can be changed, because the UN Charter, let's say, it has been adopted upon the consensus of all the countries. Not the West didn't receive any special treatment in this, but when it comes to rules-based order, the West claims to be the only rule maker. But this is not international. It's trying to impose again your mechanism of control. In multipolarity, well, this just cannot exist, because you need to exactly align the interests of everyone. So we're heading to this because the new integration process are gaining momentum and they're gaining strength. And since the unipolar world just continues discrediting itself, I think that we will eventually come to multipolarity.
You touched on the issue of finance, and I saw recently South American countries are saying that we want to have a single currency that we use as South American countries. Do you think that we're going to start seeing the emergence of new currencies and countries moving away from the dollar, from the pound, from the euro to start their own currencies?
I think that it's a natural way of, again, evolution of international finance system, because just one currency is still a sort of a requisite of unipolar world. Exactly, it's natural that you gain financial independence to uphold your position, to be like one of those equal centers of growth and power. So yes, it's possible. Of course, I'm not a
finance guru.
Yeah, finance guru. No, never in the right mind I would call myself that. But I think it's only logical that when the multipolar world emerges, that we'll have multiple currencies. What currencies this might be? Some of the already existing, or there anything new? Actually, both options stands. They're both on table, because we see that both examples proved that they are capable of surviving. Let's say, well, euro was a newly introduced currency back in the day. It was doing relatively okay, so it's not impossible to introduce a new currency. It requires a political will. It requires some sort of financial stability. Well, it's in layman's terms, from the way I see it. But it's possible, and I'm actually excited to see what the future holds.
Now, I want to touch on BRICS. How important is formations like BRICS, especially now? Because we see internationally, dynamics are changing, And I've heard many countries say we want to join BRICS. Do you think there's a possibility of growing BRICS to many other nations as well?
Speaking of BRICS and its enlargement, well, we see this as a positive sign, and it is more positive in terms of what BRICS is in its essence. So currently it's 5 countries, but our common geographical footprint, so territory-wise, we take almost 1/4 of the entire land that's been allocated to humankind, and we represent almost 43% of world's population. So BRICS is a mechanism that allows almost half of the world population to voice their concerns, to make their voice be heard. So this is representing a big part of the world. The second strong feature of BRICS is that it's geographically scattered is not exactly the correct word here, but let's stick with scattered. It encompasses country from Latin America, from South America, country from Africa, country from Asia and Europe. So we all come from the different parts of the world, and we can share with each other what seems to be the concerning issues of this or that part of the world. So we unifying different continents that would be otherwise separated from each other by oceans, by natural separating forces, so to say. So this is the strong point of BRICS. and it's why it's really important. So different peoples with different cultural, economic, even geographical, if it's possible to say so, geographical background can not just raise concerns, not just voice their way of their vision of the future, but they can share with others, and together we can melt a unified approach. So, and the news of the new countries who might be joining us later, well, this is a positive sign because more countries involved, more people get their chance to speak to the global audience, which is already unified under the BRICS aegis. So it is positive, yes, because, well, BRICS is built on cooperation, understanding, and mutual benefit. BRICS was not created as anti-something. It wasn't created against somebody. It just evolved into an important international mechanism, and it's, well, the news that the new countries are joining in, it just further proves that the importance of BRICS is growing, because other countries see the potential behind BRICS. And, well, it is up to the members of BRICS to uphold it and to explore more ways of cooperation, which are the regular annual summits of BRICS are designed for. And, well, South Africa is currently the president of BRICS, yeah, and, well, we expect it to be another successful summit. So, because all the countries are interested, they're already in BRICS, and even those countries who are looking from the outside on us, those who are aspiring and who voiced their plans to join the BRICS, they want to see the potential, and they already see it, and they want to see it evolve. So it's up to us to make BRICS stronger, and I'm sure that together we can do that.
You touched on the issue of cooperation. We recently saw the South African Navy do drills with China and Russia. And then from a South African perspective, you could see that there was some sort of defiance from opposition parties. But how important is it from the cooperation side for Russia, China, South Africa to have such cooperation and to have such military drills together?
We see these drills as another way of cooperating between countries. And all three countries that are now conducting joint naval drills are all BRICS countries. So it's yet another way of just exploring and expanding our cooperation. Russia and South Africa alone, we enjoy the strategic partnership level of cooperation. So it just gives it further volume, and gives it further substance to it. And this is a way of showing that, well, together we can achieve greater things. This is a way of countries peacefully cooperating with each other, because these drills are not designed against anyone. We don't threaten anyone with these drills. And as our minister said during the press conference, like, well, some Western countries have apparently believed that it's only them who can conduct military exercises wherever they see fit, and nobody else. When it comes to someone else's military exercises, that they try to make it look like a problem and a global one, but it's not. It's not a problem. It's a way of cooperation. It's a field of cooperation, because joint security is also the field of work we can expand on, and it's very important to uphold the stability, the global stability, because what comes after the one side constantly undermining stability, I mean NATO, which has been anything but stabilizing factor in global affairs, we see what happens. More conflicts, more destruction, more loss of life. And I'm not referring uniquely to the situation in Ukraine. Well, as I already mentioned, NATO destroyed countries. It's not defensive. And separate NATO members like USA, they have a long list of military interventions, unilateral, completely legal military interventions. Like in Iraq alone, 1 million civilians died because of US intervention. In Iraq alone. No, as you said yourself, no sanctions, no international backlash or anything. Again, double standards by the West. But getting back to the naval drills, yeah, as I said, it's just we enjoy the strategic partnership as just one of the dimensions of this partnership. That's all there's to it, it's just a drills between three equal, respected sovereign states. And as I said, my freedoms are limited by your freedoms. Doesn't, well, from our standpoint, doesn't limit anything. It's just three countries coming together. They wanted if they want to conduct the drills, they just do that. This is how the cooperation works.
Now, I want to touch on the issue of there's been a growing interest from many South Africans, when it comes to the Russian scholarships that they give South African students, when it comes to the university program of learning the Russian language. Tell us about the thinking behind such programs.
Well, the thinking is, pretty simple, if I may put it that way. It's another way of, again, expanding our cultural ties, expanding our humanitarian cooperation. As I said, it's multifaceted. Cooperation, when you say cooperation, you always have to break it down to what cooperation? Economic, financial, military, technological, science. Because this is, the rationale behind this is, for one thing, the Soviet Union also used to have those programs. Because the Soviet Union was prominent in educating people from other countries, sharing knowledge and building these humanitarian ties. We attach importance to the scholarships and education cooperation because it has a multifaceted effect, so to say. Because when you provide studies to people, those people will grow into professionals one day, and this will lead to cooperation in other areas. Let's say where we're instructing the medical workers or the scientists. That leads us further to the scientific cooperation or cooperation in, more specifically in terms of medicine. So it's a cooperation which is fundamental in terms that it opens the way for new forms of cooperation, other forms of cooperation. Because you need people. Without people, you can't do anything. It's our main, most valuable resource. So, the people, their desires, their intent to expand their knowledge. So this is the rationale behind it. We enrich our academic community, the knowledge we amass. You enrich yours. It's a win-win situation. And as I said, it's just the first step to open bigger doors and to larger fields of cooperation.
Alex, as we come to the end of the interview, and thank you very much for a very insightful interview, my last question to you: what is your dream for Africa, and what is your dream for the entire human nation?
My dream?
Yes.
Wow. That's a lot to think about. Well, I think, I'll describe it with word balance, because, I fully endorse on the dream of multipolarity, because, it's not that all nations and all people can possibly be, aligned to one way of thinking and agree with everything, or agree on everything, I would say. But it brings us to the situation when we can talk and we find a solution, one day or another, one way or another, but we find a mutually beneficial solution, because we are strong in our diversity, and we need to cherish this diversity, and in order to do that, we need to respect it, first of all. So my dream, I can say it this way, the true, genuine multipolarity, when everyone's origin, everyone's specialty, so to say, everyone's background is fully respected, taken into account, because on that ground we can perceive the better future literally for everyone, because this is a future which is being agreed with everyone.
Alex, thank you very much.
Thank you.
As we say in the South African language, sharp sharp.
Sharp, sharp.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, that was that exciting episode. Stay tuned for more. Until next time, goodbye.